Council, motion for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve agenda.
Second that?
Second by King, all in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda. All claims seem to be in order.
Seconded.
Motion made, second by Shepherd to approve this evening's consent agenda. May I have a roll call, please?
Councillor Piper?
Aye.
Councillor Robinson?
Aye.
Councillor Shepherd?
Aye.
Councillor Fisher?
Aye.
Councillor King?
Aye.
Councillor Lovering?
Aye.
Mayor Barnhart?
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Visitor public comments. Anyone wishing to address the council or something that is not on this evening's agenda, now would be the time. Seeing none, we'll move on to the continued public hearing for 23-24 fiscal year budget hearing. And this evening, we're going to be talking about maintenance and capital items.
Okay, Mayor and Council, my new computer doesn't like PowerPoints and PDFs evidently. We updated computers. So it works faster, it just doesn't really anything to do. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is we're putting together numbers, is there is an emphasis on maintenance this year. If you've been, we still want to do our tour. But the police department remodel was in 2011, and the flooring needs to be replaced. So hopefully there's no damage to any of the underlayment. It's between 15 and 23,000. But what we're looking at is LVP, or luxury vinyl plank, luxury vinyl planking, and then they would use runners and area rugs under tables and so on. The carpet's in really bad shape. It's ripped, it's dirty, but it gets a lot of use. So we also have the guts of the pool boiler need to be replaced. So we had replaced the pool boiler about 6 years ago, and now the heat exchanger. So about every 6 to 8 years, we have to do the heat exchanger. It gets us some more life, and then we have to replace the boiler. So that's in the $8,000 to $10,000 range, as opposed to a $20,000 boiler. But and along with at the pool, the bathhouse roof. If you've been swimming and you look up, the roof is in kind of bad shape. We're waiting for quotes on that. And then at the park, we want to now fence the entire basketball court instead of just the end, because as you know, we're rolling over the sealant. But we already had the quote. It's what, $5,800 to put a new sealant on that basketball court. So as we were talking about doing that, it's best to be able to block it and keep it secure. So we have a real emphasis on maintenance, and Councilman Carver used to always say, first and foremost, maintain what you've got. And so as we put those numbers together, so obviously we maintain the police car rotation religiously, because when we don't, something happens and then we need a police car. And last week the transmission went out in 2018. That had been a fairly decent rider. Oh, the head gasket. Which one has the training problem? Yeah. No, yeah. See, I got them right. 18 has the transmission problem, and 20 has the head gasket problem. 22.
Which brands, if I may ask?
The 18 is the Ford.
Ford.
And the 20.
136,000 miles.
Yeah.
20, and the Durango is 22.
That's over at the repair shop. But here's the deal. You can't buy a police car, right? Like, when we found that Dodge Challenger that we're waiting, camera hasn't hit the ground yet, shipped yesterday, so then we can get the car set up. But parts, so 22 has been over at the shop for repairs 6 weeks. So And they should, it's all should be under warranty and they should be repairing it, right? It's just getting the work done. So we maintain that. We're working currently with the fire department on vehicle replacement. Public safety committee will probably vet some things. Timing, you know, we talked about debt last time, and that's good. What could we borrow, right? So I think fire is pretty well set up, but rescue, we need to replace the rescue probably sooner than we thought we were gonna have to. Well, money-wise, right? So water and sewer, we always kind of balanced out. We finish one project and we start another. We're at least partway through the debt. So the good news on water is that as of June 30th, the generator project is done. And the Fifth Avenue East-North project is done. We'll file all the, I filed all the grant paperwork. We were using $100,000 out of our ARPA funds, and we had a $143,000 competitive grant, and then our funds for Fifth Avenue East North. So then the state will come and do their visit, but we're not rolling over that expense. In sewer, phase 1 of the lift station is coming along. The work is about, the lift station in Maine, about 50% complete construction-wise as of June 30th. They've made a lot of progress in the last about 15 days as well. Working on, we've had a lot of engineering done. We are 2 months behind where we wanted to be with the engineering for the wastewater treatment plant. We were supposed to be calling for bids in June. We haven't seen the 90% plans yet, so a little nervous about that. But we'll be carrying over 4.8 million in sewer. Our contracts have a deadline of December 2024. So we know it won't all get done in that year. And with our city money, the $2 million competitive grant and the $863,000 House Bill 632 funds, right? So we got 2.8 million coming from the state grant funding, the other grant funding that we had on hand. So that project will be rolling over.
Susan?
Yes.
I have a question. As long as do we have to have that sewer project completed by December 2024?
Well, that's the
Or do you have to
contract.
have substantial completion?
The contracts that we have for that 2.8 million, say December 2024, final.
Okay.
The engineers keep saying that, oh, they'll extend it.
That's what I'm wondering.
Congress has not extended those dates.
Okay.
And so I keep pushing back. But LHC will start construction, so with our sewer main project now completed, he's just doing cleanup. LHC will come in and do that paving. But, so that expense that we thought would, well, weather, right? We'll roll that over into this year's street construction. And maybe we can get some more done with the additional money, but that project will get done here in August. So on your consent agenda, you saw the raise grant agreement, and you authorized me to execute that. 3 months of writing that agreement with the feds. So that $10,581,000. So I'll send that to the feds tomorrow. The Washington DC folks will sign off on it, but our first phase will be engineering. And so for this year, so preliminary engineering is estimated at $800,000. So you're not going to see $10 million in your budget because we're at least a year and a half off from construction. But we will, most of the council members have gone through this before. The Public Works Committee, we put out RFPs for proposals. We select our engineer, we negotiate the contract, and we start moving. I think there's been quite a bit of interest in doing this race grant. So that's the good news, right? But it won't be a you won't see your budget inflated by 10 million because we won't get there. You will see the preliminary engineering. So it took a lot of work to, I hope you guys, when you read through your packets, you read through the word, all that wordsmithing that we had to do after we were awarded the grant. And then the TA grant, Chris and I sat in on a Zoom meeting last week, and they've decided now that, so TA grant is Railroad Street Sidewalk, they've decided that now they need to add a right-of-way phase. Because there's 30 feet there at Church Women United, the sidewalk crosses over their property. I asked them if I could just go ask Church Women United if they would donate that 30 feet, because they're not going to be able to complete the right-of-way phase by September 30th. And DOT has all these magical dates. So if the right-of-way phase isn't completed by December 30th, guess what? Engineering doesn't get completed until 2025. With construction of the sidewalk, and I'm looking at you, Mayor, because I know that this has been really frustrating for you too. Like, how hard is it to put in a sidewalk? So I'm hoping that our local folks can help us with that, because we pay 13.42%. And you can just hear the dollar signs. They said they'd let us know what our contract changed by. So that's also kind of when you're building into the budget, how much money are we setting aside now? Like originally it was $154,000, and now we had to add $7,600 not too long ago, and now there's a right-of-way phase.
It's probably a good time to ask favors from those folks, their congressional delegation.
Yeah, something. So, and that plays into with 12th Avenue West. And what is it that the railroad, what is it that we have to do and put into the budget for that railway crossing? So we can have a safe sidewalk and improve that peak. So that's kind of, I told you there were some significant maintenance and capital items. That's it. That's what we're looking at right now. In this batch of claims, we found a very good used vehicle, and we traded in the Trailblazer. It was kind of on its end of life. And so you saw that. So for parks, because we have more parks employees, and we have more, we needed a vehicle that could pull a trailer and get better than 6 miles to the gallon.
I missed part of that. That you got rid of the Trailblazer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's the staff car now?
The Passport.
A Passport?
Black. We bought that, I don't know how long ago. Before winter, because the ice came and put a dent in it when it had like 200 miles.
So you traded in our wonderful Trailblazer for that Dodge 1500?
For the, what is it from up here? It was a.
From Beaker.
Yeah.
Beaker actually took that as a trade?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's a good sale. I thought they were casual.
No.
Well, then that was a good deal.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So my typical rule is we don't buy any capital. We don't do any capital until the council adopts the budget. That was too good to pass up. And it was a priority. We needed a vehicle that got better than 6 miles per gallon. And the other pickup they were using had to be towed twice on a Sunday. We had to call somebody out to rescue the parks employee. So it was important. So all of this stuff will be coming forward. I attended the Zoom meeting on the Department of Revenue put on. I did drive into the Garden Inn. I think the Department of Revenue is doing a very good job of messaging and saying that we're required by law to put this number on here, but we already know that it's going to be different because values go up, mills go down. And it sounds like Department of Revenue wants to work with the legislature, with the local government committee to get a bill in to get that changed before in the next legislative session, because we all know that that's not the right number. And it creates a lot of heartburn, not only for us, but I think folks must be doing a good job of looking at those numbers. I've only had like 6 phone calls. So, so far so good. I do think the Department of Revenue is doing a good job of saying we're legally required to put this out, but it's not accurate. So we won't even, that's it for that tonight. So that's all I wanted to present tonight on your budget.
Okay. Moving on. And that public hearing continues. Unfinished business. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at your proposed letter? And at this time, we can have a discussion whether we like it the way it is, whether we want to propose some changes. And we can give a finished copy to the manager to go ahead and put together for my signature.
Well, I do have a question because I have some friends that have a barber shop down in Napa. And they have problems all the time with some of the folks that float in and around there. And they've asked repeatedly for somebody to come and look with them on a Tuesday morning, because obviously barber shops are closed Sunday and Monday. And one day I was down there at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning getting my haircut. She says, come on, look behind our building. What was behind the building, folks, was absolutely disgusting.
Behind where?
Behind Montana Barber Shop. I'm looking at the details of what they showed me, but it started out with needles and alcohol and went to used clothing. And they have to clean that up every God blessed Tuesday morning from the homeless that's down there. And a lot of it is that, part of it is, and I was accosted in the wintertime by the Carhartt boys, and I assume you know who the Carhartt boys were or are. And it was rather interesting. And we watched them accost several women coming out of Napa. So I know there's a problem. We really don't have a specific problem here. But I'm concerned about whatever happens is, what's wrong with Kalispell being the center of the universe, not taking care of some of the health problems? I know that there's a path that they travel, you know. They sleep at one spot, travel to another, they go to another, and they travel around all through Kalispell because we've tried to help some of the veterans. That's where I'm coming from. And it's been probably the most frustrating thing I've ever been involved in. I realize some of them don't want bothered. They would just as soon live the way they live and leave me alone because they don't want to bother, you know, they're unknown by the government, quote unquote. But what do we do? That's my question repeatedly. I've even asked Senator Tester over the telephone actually, what do we need to do? Because they're not getting help in Kalispell like they thought, and we don't have the ability to handle it up here. Because we don't have any clinics, specifically mental health clinics and drug clinics like they have. Because Cimarron, which I guess has been renamed, they used to, I've helped some of those ladies in there with some of the veterans. But what do we do? The legislative session didn't spend hardly any money on mental health or homelessness. Yet they were sitting on about $50 million that they could have spent. They didn't spend any of it, much to our chagrin. So that's my concern, is that that's what ends up being, is that the property owners end up with a mess. And you can be heartless and tell them we're going to round them up. And the rumor is that Whitefish now buses their homelessness to Kalispell. I just found that out at the weekend from a friend over at Beartooth, who's from Whitefish. They're busing their problems occasionally down to Kalispell and dumping them off.
Because Kalispell has the services supposedly to help.
Either that or Whitefish doesn't want to go out there taking a choice.
I got to speak up a little bit on this, and that's concerning the Board of Health. We have a committee in the Board of Health that addresses the mental health committee, and they've been looking at this quite a bit. I mean, I've only been on the right year and a half, but they've been trying to get the interdiction person when they have a call in and it's a mental health call, essentially, and the police are responding. They had a heck of a time getting anybody to be that person to go with them and do that, and then take them to some place where they could, I can't remember the name of the center they were taking, where they could hold them for 24 hours and find out what they needed and get them going, right? Well, now, this year, they've actually got the money from the budget to get that second person. So, and they seem to work just about exclusively, it seems, with Kalispell PD, where they call, am I on the right, do you have an opportunity to call that crisis intervention person?
So she's valley-wide. She works with all law enforcement.
But you can bet most of it is in Kalispell, it's like,
I'd say it's probably 90% between Kalispell and then extended out Flathead County.
so it's kind of a county issue, a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, you have one person who's running to almost every mental health call that law enforcement is involved in that doesn't have something to do with law enforcement. It's just mental health. She's running a little ragged right now.
Well, yeah, and we've been trying to get that position filled. I don't know the exact extent of it.
They've filled it twice,
Mhm.
and then those people have left within 6 months of being hired.
Yeah. So it's an issue like everything else, but at least the county is looking at it. You wonder why Kalispell is kind of the worst. I guess it's the biggest city in the county, and that's where all the counties
That's where they end up.
things are offered to people, whether it be free needles, needle return, needle checkout, all that kind of stuff, which is a big program, the most successful in the state, is what we have going right now in Flathead County. And that, I don't agree with you should be able to get needles anytime you want them if you're addicted, but if you don't, it comes back and bites you in the butt. So if they have a good return rate, they don't get them all back. They get a pretty good amount of them back, which that's a little bit of progress. So Mike, I think it's because of the concentration of the services and all that stuff. The health department is aware of the problems and trying to do everything they can to take care of it. That's all I have. Continue discussion?
No, but I think the letter's good, though. I mean,
Yeah,
I was shocked initially at the response from Kalispell about their homelessness problem. Pretty heartless. Because, all I have to do, I've worked with vets, and all I have to do is sit down and talk to some of them. I mean, it was just break their heart, the problems that they got. And a lot of them, like I said, they want to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, and they won't change their lifestyle. And if they end up DEAD, it's basically because that was their choice to get out of the mess they're in their mind. And it's a shame. But there needs to be more of a concentrated effort countywide on helping them. And there are agencies that we at one time, we had 80 groups in a room talking about veterans. When it was done, there was only 6 of them who never done anything with veterans. The rest of them looked at their hand up because they thought we had this, we had free money. Just because you have a veteran riding a horse doesn't mean we're going to pay that horse hay bill for 12 months. That's not how this works.
It almost needs to start above the local level. The assessment of these folks needs to be done.
Yeah.
They need to have that assessment, how to best help them, guide them, whatever needs to be done. And to me, the upper level has let that go. Nobody's fighting anything.
I know one thing, and you brought it up before, is the fact that so many of these people are not homeless veterans. So many of them are just caught in a bad spot with their families.
We have families.
And there's a lot of that, and granted, we can do that for the work, with people with mental health problems, but there's also this big, large group that's continuing that are Columbia, or not, that are Flathead Valley folks that don't have anywhere to go.
There's no housing.
There's nowhere for them.
Part of the assessment
And the
process.
services are kind of lacking to provide them some housing while they get back on their feet. So I like what's in the letter. And,
yeah.
I think that's something too that Sean can address is the programs that are there where you go into unneeded warnings, maybe the Ray of Hope, you go into these other places, that how many resources really are available and how much work is actually done to get these people in. And unfortunately, as we know, things go very slowly. Very, very slowly to get somebody into a place, not always, when somebody else is moving out there, it's just, there is no 100% answer to it. But yeah, and I don't want in our conversations to lead to it's just the drug use and things like that. Because yes, there is homeless people that, because of housing, same as warming shelter, people that if you go in there and you would be like Mike said, you'd be shocked
Yeah.
at the people that really are homeless in this valley. It's not all the people that are trash, and there is that, there's people that have houses that trash places. There's,
One of the worst ones I saw was it was a teacher who called me and said there was a family living in a suburban up in Blankenship. So we got a group of guys together, got a bunch of money rounded up, and we got those kids winter clothes. There was absolutely no way we could find housing for them. Even the BOA, Volunteers in America, we couldn't find housing for them at that time. This has been about 6 years ago. But we made sure that those kids had food and clothing all winter long. And that's where they were living, in a freaking suburban up in Blankenship. We're out of Utah. Yeah. How I ended up here, I don't remember anymore. It was just really sad. Yeah.
I have nothing in particular to add. I approved the letter. I'd be interested to hear, I don't know if Mr. O'Neill, I assume that's Mr. O'Neill, out there has anything to add. He came up to be a part of this conversation. I don't know if it's a presentation or if it's or where we are on that.
Well, I don't know, if you'd like to address this, please do.
Well, I didn't write anything down, but I figured I could speak a little bit. Thank you guys for having me here. Is it okay if I mess around with this a little bit? Sure. No karaoke today. So. Thank you. Sean O'Neill from Collaborative Housing Solutions of Northwest Montana. Thank you so much for reading the letter and inviting me to present or, informally discuss with you guys. We do have a lot of issues. What you guys are bringing up are the very conversations that we find ourselves having almost daily with folks that are trying to understand this problem, right? Because it is a national problem, but it's a local issue right now for us, right? And Columbia Falls doesn't necessarily see the same things like Kalispell does, because as the county seat, it's got a few more resources. I heard the Whitefish, rumor on the street or word on the street, and I can neither confirm nor deny that. But I do know that Kalispell ends up being a hub for the whole Northwest Montana area. We got people from Glacier County, we got people from Lake, Sanders, Lincoln, all over Columbia Falls. When they fall on hard times, there's a lot of resources. I also am the Community Services Director for Community Action Partnership of Northwest Montana. And so we serve Lake, Lincoln, Sanders, and Flathead counties. And we run a lot of different programs. Low-income energy assistance is one of our big ones, weatherization. But we also have a lot of housing programs like Section 8 and emergency housing programs for homeless prevention and rapid rehousing for folks that are homeless. Permanent supportive housing for the ones that are chronically homeless, and those are like the Carhartt gang that you saw, and the needles and the clothes and camp out behind a store that's closed for. We see that all the time. Our biggest thing is we've been organized since 2013, Collaborative Housing CHS. I'll say CHS. So I don't have to keep saying it. So. And we've been trying. We came up with a plan in 2014. It's a 5-year plan to address homelessness. Of course, it ended right before COVID, but our big thing there was that we needed to unify our efforts and try to figure out what we were dealing with, because that was our biggest issue. We had a pretty decent-sized homeless population compared to the rest of the state, way bigger than our actual county size. We probably had the second or third largest homeless population for the last 10 years of the entire state, Flathead County. Whereas we're probably about the 6th or 7th largest. And we were getting about the 8th most funding for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing and homeless prevention funds. So kind of think about the math there. It's not adding up. Then you take into account 2017, 2018 legislation, governor playing chicken, with, cat would have won that one. Playing chicken with, behavioral health services. We saw case management get cut. I used to be a mental health and developmental disability case manager. I got laid off, and then I got rehired by the people who got the contract for about $4 less an hour and no health benefits. So I ended up having to go to where I first came up as an AmeriCorps Vista Community Action Partnership and started rerunning the housing programs that I also wrote the 5-year plan to address homelessness as of this for the area. We said we needed 3,500 in the next 5 years of affordable housing units that were oriented towards people on fixed incomes. you can tell that there was maybe a slight fraction of that was built in the last, since 2013. And now we're seeing a large amount of our seniors and our folks with disabling conditions that are entering that homeless population. In the last 2 years, that's where we've seen the biggest impact, between the behavioral health going away when COVID started and they lost all contact with any supports. Those folks spiraled. I just had a person that had lost their case manager 6 months ago, barely clinging on to housing for the last 5 years we haven't housed. Just lost his housing 2 weeks ago because he kept letting people stay over, because that case manager wasn't there every week to kick people out and make sure that they were okay. So we're seeing a whole bunch of issues. We don't have crisis stabilization units. We have funding for it, but we don't have enough to actually run and operate our crisis stabilization house that could hold a few folks that needed maybe a short-term stay because they're not well enough to be on the street. We aren't really able to use the systems that we have in place or that as designed for getting people to Warm Springs when they really need it. I had a veteran that's been homeless for the last 2 years that we housed for about 3 months, who is very out of it. He has served 2 tours, once in Afghanistan, one in Iraq, and he has 2 children, an ex-wife. He moved up here to be with family at a homestead that they had been here for 5 generations, and he got kicked out of his family because he was mentally unwell, and stayed at the warming center until was not able to because made some other female residents or visitors, guests, uncomfortable. Well, it took about 2 years. I saw him eat a live duck while we were doing homeless outreach. But a few months ago, he got arrested for indecent exposure in a park to two young children, and he finally is getting a psyche back. So we're seeing folks. I mean, law enforcement is seeing it. They're struggling every day to figure out, because they're the ones that are having to be case managers for a lot of these folks when they're not meant to do that, you know. And so we're seeing the systems break down. We were bursting at the seams 2 years ago when COVID really was impacting us. Now the seams are gone. They're not even there. Columbia Falls, you guys haven't quite seen the impact of it, but I do feel like Blankenship and other places like that are going to be where you do see it creep in from. You already have lots of people that are already camping out in the woods, that are living in their vehicles in Super One parking lot, that are barely hanging on to the low-income, now not low-income housing, because either they've lost their tax credits, or now people have sold when they had a $400 mortgage on a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and now it's a $2,500 mortgage and they still want to rent it. So we're just seeing all of these things collide, and what's resulting now is we're seeing the Carhartt gang, which is a bunch of folks that are struggling with substance use, or mental health as well. Most of these folks that you're seeing on the street have severe trauma that they've experienced. Whether they were, thrown away by their family, maybe they never had a family, they're in the foster care system, maybe they have developmental disabilities and they never were treated appropriately, or they have significant mental health. But we're seeing a lot of that stuff cycle and come to the surface now. And that's what some of the stuff we're trying to figure out. We've realized we don't get enough funding federal, and we shouldn't, to figure out these things. And they tell us you need to come up with community groups to figure out community solutions and work together, because, taxpayer dollars shouldn't be the thing that solves all of this, right? We have to work together on a lot of different levels, from a little part of city government, a little bit more county government, hopefully, where they have control of certain avenues, make paths easier for us to develop things, to get new programs in, businesses to be able to fund things that maybe red tape would make it a little bit more difficult. And then the public sector for social service providers to really ramp up how they're able to perform. But we're all struggling right now. We're growing faster than our resources have the means to, take care of what we have. And what's happening is we're losing our locals. Our locals are the ones that are suffering the most. And it's because they're getting priced out of their housing. They're losing they're losing the resources that we did have, because it takes 3 months to get a doctor's appointment. It takes 2 months to get into a mental health provider whenever you're out of your mind on the street right now, how can you hold an appointment 2 months down the line? How can you get to work? How can you go? Remember that you have these 3 days of the week at Warming Center that it's shower, but you got your Monday mixed up with your Tuesday. So, I mean, there's so many things that are going on that it's so hard to pinpoint. I mean, we have the second largest amount of homeless veterans in the state. We were the second largest homeless population last year. We were 6 behind, or 5 behind Missoula. So they were at 324 or 25. We were at 319. When the commissioner's letter came out in January, we do our every year the whole country does a point in time survey to see what the status of their homelessness is and housing instability. Every year we do it, the whole state of Montana does it on the last Thursday of January. Perfect time to find all the cold folks, right? So we have to go and do these assessments. Well, a week after the commissioner's letter was when we did this assessment this last year. We apparently solved homelessness so much in the last year that we saw a 20% reduction in our homeless population. We went from 319 to 263 folks, which doesn't add up to what we're seeing if you go to the streets of Kalispell. It's only increased. Our chronic homeless, which are folks that are disabled and have been homeless for at least a year, most of them much longer than that, has went from 22 at the beginning of 2020, just before COVID, to 87 last year, and it showed 84, even with that huge reduction in our overall homeless. So I'm, betting that it's much larger than that. Our disabled, our folks that are have disabling conditions that are homeless, went from 52 to 149. So we've quadrupled and tripled our most vulnerable folks on the street. And so we're not going to get anywhere until we figure out how to get those people that went, so it's, a lot of the times they aren't ready for it right now, right? A lot of folks don't want it, but they do at some point, I promise you. Maybe they woke up today and they were ready, and we have to have the resources available for when they're ready to do it to get them out of that situation. And so I'd like to say something that's not really the most appropriate, but I think it's a realistic approach to things. You can lead the horse to water and you can't make it drink. But you be ready to drown it. Okay, because once it finally gets thirsty or once it's ready to breathe, you can let it drink a little bit of water and you can maybe get it back on its feet. So that's what I try to do with this Collaborative Housing Solutions group. We're trying to work with our partners that are in the community. We've got a strategic plan for the next 10 years that's focused on reducing homelessness, preventing homelessness. We have programs available where we're underutilized on our Section 8 by about 25% for the whole northwest of Montana. We're not building more affordable housing. We need to, but we're not, and it's not going to help the people right now. We do have a lot of Section 8 vouchers. We do have a lot of resources, or we're limited in our emergency housing resources, but we need partners. Part of that is maybe bringing, local and county, city, local government to the table. Not the solution is only on you guys, but we need to work together so that we know whenever we put forth something that we're going to be partnering on stuff and not working against each other, because when we do that, we're not going to gain any traction. And I apologize for taking a lot of time. I get a little long-winded here. I didn't know if we were going to go back and forth. I'm punching the microphone. So. Feels like karaoke now.
Do you work with James Graham down at the
Oh yeah, James.
And
yeah,
he's one of our board members, and he's a guy that we lean on when we need housing for some of the vets. So yeah.
So I work with Volunteers of America. We have a coordinated entry, which is also something that's required by the federal government for our community to receive funding. The funding that CAP has, Heart Locker does for youth homeless projects, BOA. We all have to partner together and be part of this continuum of care, the Collaborative Housing Solutions. And then we also have to do this coordinated entry. We meet weekly. All the social service providers from the Public Defender's Office, shelters, VOA, even folks out in Libby, that are the community health center out there. We work together so that we can prioritize for our housing programs the most likely to die on the street. So our permanent supportive housing is for our chronically homeless. We have about 15 folks in those programs right now. Those are where we use our coordinated entry system to figure out who literally is the most likely that's going to die on the street, and we try to get them housed as quickly as possible. And then we work back from there on how to prioritize housing that landlords maybe will come and offer us. Hey, I have a unit for you, can you know, that are willing to work with us on this. Now, I see that we have success in that. That coordinated entry has worked really well. In the last year, it's a very sad statistic, but 3 of the folks that we housed with that program did pass away. They passed away housed. And that was a big accomplishment for us because they've been homeless for years, sometimes decades, some of those folks. So we were able to give those people a place to stay their last night. And you know what? They were much happier, I promise you. And it proves that that system's been working. We just don't have enough housing. And we really don't have enough emergency housing funds. We still are about 8 in the whole. So we serve Northwest Montana. So that's those 4 counties I was talking about with these funds. And so we're still getting the 8th most when we're probably 2nd or 3rd. This last year, we were one of the only communities that saw less homeless people on that point in time survey. The rest of the state increased by 1/3. So the numbers are deceiving this year. The true numbers are probably, we're more like at about 400 probably homeless folks during the middle of winter. In the summertime, those triple or even quadruple. You guys will see those summer homeless a lot more than the Kalispell area. We still are going to see them because they're on the street now. 2 years ago, we were warning folks about you're going to start seeing them on the streets. They have nowhere to go, and we have no place for them. We had over 60 folks that were seniors at the warming center last year. And that is a shelter that only can house 50. So we already need a senior shelter in our community. We only have 4 family units, and I can promise you there's a lot more homeless families in suburbans trying to camp. We were moving people out of their housing because they doubled their rent in the last year and moving them to campgrounds for the summer so that we could maybe weather the summer prices and get to winter, hopefully, or get to fall and keep it the 2 weeks of fall, get them in housing before winter. So we're at desperate times, and the folks here are really going to be struggling with the boom that you guys are having with the influx of we've seen it with the revenue, our taxes increasing by 50% on that. I mean, that means that the housing is going to only, hopefully not increase, but it's not going to be going down as quickly as it needs to. I mean, studies show, I think you guys had someone give us a housing study that they explained that based on the information they gathered from an NYU report that 10% increasing your overall housing stock by 10% a year will reduce your rent by 1%. That's not feasible or viable. Not that you guys are know what I'm referring to, but like building our housing at a clip is not going to address our current situation. And so we've got to be creative. It's not like those solutions are just right on the cusp of us. They're simple, but they're hard to accomplish. And so I really do appreciate you letting me talk a lot more.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Mr. O'Neill. So the one question that we had that Councilor King and I could not, who do you want the city council to send the letter to?
Oh, okay.
You wrote to the council,
You
asked
could
for...
send it to Collaborative Housing Solutions in Northwest, and my address at 214 Main would be
Okay.
just fine.
Just address that to
Mhm.
board.
Yeah, that would be great, thank you. Or just CHS, we have our little acronyms because that's way too long of a name to say. Thank you. Oh.
And then I had one other question. You mentioned that the Section 8 is 25% underutilized. Is that, but we don't have a lot of Section 8 units here. And one of
So
the issues,
I mean the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So
okay,
it's separate from like project-based Section 8, you know, like Columbia Villa or something like that where they're subsidized. These are vouchers that, you know, I believe everybody that's on a fixed income as soon as they're receiving their retirement benefits should get like this voucher is. But it's a housing choice voucher. It basically subsidizes the rent of any unit that they choose to live in. So if a landlord had something that was affordable, right, that's the kind of the key thing here, like $900 for a one-bedroom with utilities included would be considered, $920 would be considered affordable, and that would be something that would work for 1 or 2 people on that program. And they have the ability to move it to wherever would take it. So we have have 348-ish right now and have ability to go up to like 420, 430. So we're underutilized for what we are lacking in affordable housing. This is a resource that's here right now. We just need to find the landlords that would be willing to work with the homeless veteran or work with the homeless family. So that coordinated entry is actually really cool because we'll bring people in that only want to work with one type of person. But that's okay, right? Like, we're okay with that. We need as many of you, if you work with families and you want to work with veterans and you're okay with anybody, that'll help us help a lot of people. And so we're trying to come up with new ways how to open those doors, maybe come up with policy that would, even local policy that would allow for opportunities for landlords and things like that. So again, I'll keep going if you let me. So.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you and I appreciate you guys, because you guys are the leaders that are really going to help, at least Columbia Falls set the tone for this, because I know it hasn't been as prominent of an issue here as it has been in like Kalispell and other areas, but just having me here today is one of the biggest steps that any local government in our community has done for partnering with a collaborative housing solution. So I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you for all the information.
Thanks.
This time I mentioned it too.
I wasn't trying to ignore Jenny. Jenny, did you have any comments concerning the
No.
matter that's proposed?
She said she did not. She is having some difficulty hearing council. So she did note that, please tell the mayor I have nothing to report. Oh, well, we're not there yet. Sorry. I'm just shortened this meeting. Jenny, do you have anything to add about the community-wide solutions for the homelessness and housing instability? If you could hear it. Okay, she's still, she did say she's having trouble hearing.
We'll move on. Ordinances and resolutions.
So one last question. Do you want mayor and council, would you just authorize like the mayor signing this letter? And it'll look pretty on letterhead tomorrow morning for the mayor to sign. That's
Council?
a motion would be
I would
appropriate.
really want to individually sign it.
I would like to individually sign it, seriously, and I would write legibly, I promise.
Okay. All right, we'll put all signatures.
Great, yeah, I'll have it.
So let's do this. Let's get that printed up tomorrow.
Yes.
It'll be in the office, therefore available for everybody to just come in and sign and, yeah, that'll work. Perfect. Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay.
All right, now we're moving on. Resolution 1902, approving the final plat of St. Richard's subdivision.
Mayor and council, we had granted a waiver of preliminary plat. The St. Richard's subdivision is a 2-lot minor subdivision. And you might recall, this is the location that the Boys and Girls Club is looking at, and they've spent the last year-ish moving toward final plat. And on the consent agenda, you had the subdivision improvement agreement. They have bonded for the water and sewer extension as required in the plat. So the first step, of course, is to get final plat so then they can actually purchase the lot and then they'll move forward. So the staff report was included in here. They have met all the conditions. Oh, I'm in the wrong part of the agenda, that's why. All right, so it's very straightforward. Thank you, Councilman Fisher, for pointing out the typo on preliminary plat shall expire. It should read 3 years from the date. So they met, they submitted, and Mr. Breckenridge was here earlier, He might have thought my budget discussion was going to go on longer. But, so we have the staff report to grant final plat. They have met all of the conditions with the subdivision improvement agreement, and staff recommends approval.
Before we move to the motion, I have a question. It's kind of silly, but, so what they've done is they just divided it into 2 lots essentially?
2 lots?
It's just, okay, I was curious what that additional line in the middle of it was.
Yes, so it'll be a 2-lot minor subdivision. Later on, the Boys and Girls Club will come in for a conditional use permit when they're ready to build their building.
Okay. Council?
Motion to approve resolution 802.
Second that.
Second by King. Roll call, please.
Counselor Robinson? Aye. Counselor Shepard?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Lovering?
Aye.
Counselor Piper?
Aye.
Mayor Barnhart?
Aye, resolution 1902 is approved. I love seeing us moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really amazing.
Next, resolution 1903, amending Fund 3020 Go Street Improvement Budget Appropriations.
This is resolution 1903 is here's my page numbers. Is a statutory requirement. The 3020, Fund 3020 is the general obligation street improvements loan that was paid off completely. So this, there was $9,967 of cash. So in order to have the budget authority to move it, we had to increase that. So this increases the budget authority and transfers that remainder to the general fund, where staff recommends approval.
All right, council?
I move that we approve resolution number 1903.
Seconded by Shepherd. Roll call, please.
Counselor Shepard?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Lovering?
Aye.
Counselor Piper?
Aye.
Counselor Robinson?
Aye.
Mayor Barnhart?
Aye, resolution 1903 is approved. Next reports, business from mayor and council. I'll start down here with you, John.
Old news for me, just, did we have any update on the left turn signals
Yeah.
at all?
On August 21st, Mr. Vosen from Department of Transportation will be standing.
Oh, okay. August 25th. I was mistaken on my date.
That's the 21st?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's not getting no better out there. I'm done. Thanks.
Aye, thank you.
I have nothing.
Susan, when's the next railroad meeting about our crossing?
But we don't have a meeting.
I mean, are we waiting for them to make a decision?
No, it's engineered. They've reviewed the engineering, where they are reviewing the engineering, but they want basically a whole new crossing. So the question now, so the state of Montana Department of Transportation put it on what's called a Section 130 crossing. What we don't know, and I mentioned that, right, during significant budget matters. What we don't know is how much of that became our responsibility when you're talking about all new mechanics and gates, because we're touching that pavement and adding a sidewalk. So have calls out to Department of Transportation. Did talk to our congressional folks, their reps, to say we might need your help with the railroad. But the big thing is who's going to pay for that? I mean, that ka-ching sound
Yeah,
when you
that's
start
not cheap.
when you start
Yeah.
adding all new gates. In the 12th Avenue West project, we anticipated replacing the old pavement with those not concrete panels, steel panels that they put over now, right? So they don't pave crossings now, they put the steel panels. We had anticipated on the city dime $72,000 for those panels. The panels actually are on stock and over there at Whitefish at BNSF. It was during our review though, where they start measuring, it's 4 feet 3 inches from here, and this is this, and we want this, and we want that. So that's where we are, of what is it that we're required to do, and what does it mean when they put it on the section 130. So I'm actually hoping that Mr. Gozen can tell me before August 21st. What does this mean for the city? Because there's a 1995 crossing agreement with the city that basically says whichever party touches the crossing is responsible for the expense. But I'm sure that could have been anticipated that these mechanics are 30 years old and they're 3 inches too close to the existing pavement, so we want you to replace it for a spur line.
Like we talking about
No, I'm talking about over at the Whitefish Medical.
All right, so that's it, that's,
So we're not anywhere in Whitesville either.
well, we know that it would be $800,000 to put it
That's what I
in.
said, okay.
So, I mean, we got it that far, right? It's 800,000, and so there is some in that new tranche of Department of, Federal Department of Transportation money. They have done some quiet zones. So, but again, it comes down to, do we have the matching funds, right? When we're matching these other, our match for the raise is 500,000 coming out of the water fund, but like that, what do we have to match it? Like if it's a 20 or 30% match.
Okay.
So, but it's still on your list. You'll see.
Well, that's just a question because I know Chad had asked me and I said, well, we're waiting for a decision, but not from you.
I'm gonna email him numbers.
Okay.
I talked to him,
Okay.
so.
All right. Thank you.
So hopefully they can help.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I would ask Ms. Lovering if she has anything this evening.
That's what she said, no.
Oh, I want to make sure. Jack, okay, I had a couple. First of all, I went in and visited, once in a while I stop and visit our full-time firefighters. And especially after those two, within 3 days, we had multiple fatalities. And I went in and visited with them about that. And they, how lucky are we that we have full-time people here for those responses. I mean, they just, as soon as the call comes in, they hit the road running, and that's just justifies everything we ever wanted. Plus, he said, I can't remember what day it was like 6th or 7th or 8th or something, but they were already going to the 11th, they were already got like 10 calls or something in the first few days, or no, it was like 7th, they already had 10 calls for July. So it's just incredible. But those guys are
Today they were out mowing and weed whacking. I mean, I like it. I mean, it's great.
No. So I just wanted to congratulate them and make sure they understand that we super appreciate what all the volunteers and everybody is doing to keep the people running.
I think how we did that.
Yeah.
That's what I still chuckle about. And all the people that said, no, it'll never happen, and they voted it overwhelmingly, didn't they, when that vote came? It just floors me every time I think about that resort tax there. I just paid a big resort tax in Red Line, so I know where that
Next thing I had was, are we getting, as rapidly as things are drying out, before we couldn't tell people that they had to cut their grass because it wasn't a fire hazard. It's a fire hazard.
Letters are out.
That was my question. We've got letters out and we're going to enforce them.
Yeah, we coordinate, our public works assistant coordinates with the police department. So
Can we just
letters
send
are
those
going-
people that they ignore, can we just send them a letter and send them a ticket? And say you didn't mean to show up at court?
That's not how the code is written, but,
No, I mean, if you don't do it within the number of days we've allocated, then what's next?
what's next is then the city cuts it and we bill them, and if they don't pay us, it gets placed on their tax bill.
Okay, so it's
So
not a
there's-
civil infraction.
It is a civil infraction, but to get the work done, it's expedited, right? That, okay, you didn't cut it by this time, or you didn't contact us and say, yep, they're coming to cut it, then we cut it and we bill them. Because what's our goal? We want to reduce the fire hazards.
Have we
need
got
to get
someone
that.
to do this mowing of all these places that are numerous?
Well, we've used our Parks and Streets Department in the past.
And they're able to keep up with it?
Well, we haven't mowed too many lots because the majority get it cut. They get that letter because when you guys set the rates the last time, it's not, it used to be that our rates were less expensive than contacting a contractor. That is not true now. So they don't want us to mow out and then if they didn't go it. So, and it is still an infraction. And we get it, but we do that so that the work actually gets done and it gets billed. Like I said, if they don't pay, it gets placed on their taxes. Because the way, like with an infraction, if you just have a citation, you get to have your day in court. So you come in and you plead not guilty, or most people do, plead not guilty, and then your court date is set for 3 months later. Like if
Yeah, I understand. I'm just curious, I'm making sure that we get this stuff covered, but we end up burning a couple hours.
So we,
That's all I care about.
yes, and we're on it.
Okay, next was, I saw on Facebook after I got back from camping that there was a post at 12:30 a.m. about music being so loud at the coop. Did anyone else see that Facebook? So it was someone that lives in the proximity of the coop. He said, what in the world's going on? My windows are still rattling. It's 12:30 a.m. and they're still playing music. And I'm wondering, that shouldn't happen unless they had a special permit or something.
Technically, they can play music till 2 a.m. as long as it's reasonable.
As long as it's reasonable.
There's a good term to argue about.
Yeah, it's well defined in our codes.
Okay.
It was addressed, we went down and told them that they had to close the garage doors. I had to schedule a follow-up with the owners about how it went to that level. It wasn't that level on Friday, it wasn't that level on Sunday, so now simply, this is going to be a quote-unquote intimate event to what the document is.
Because I know we talked about this and we've done a lot of investigating, we've asked some, we changed some ordinances or whatever to take care of this issue. To see that post at 12:30 a.m. just kind of bothered me that
There was,
our work
Is that Saturday night?
that was Saturday night, there was one complaint.
Because they didn't have a permit.
They submitted them, and then in the discussion, like I said, it was talked about making it very clear that after parties are supposed to be an intimate after party and got out of hand.
Okay.
The next one was, after we fixed Fifth, with the new water line and everything, have we, and the other work we've done, are you able to see any water loss as compared to last year? I know it's really hard because of how much people are watering everything, but has there been a significant reduction?
Yes, we're pumping a lot less water. The 10 million gallons, well, through until people started irrigating, and now we see a savings pretty consistently of 8 million for the month less than lost. And they'll read meters. What day is this? December. You're going to read meters. They either read meters today or tomorrow because this summer number.
So the next meeting, maybe we can see what we pumped and what's been billed.
Yeah,
and
I'm
see the
going to
discrepancy.
give you the whole year. Because we're pumping a lot less than we were. So there's some savings.
Good, it's money well spent.
Yeah.
Also, what are you projecting for the resort tax collection in your budget this year?
I haven't finished that number yet. It will, I'm looking at the collections coming in now for June and comparing them to last year. I don't have a revenue estimate. It won't be 797.
Where did I see the 1.475?
Is what we collected this year.
Okay, so that gives us a basis for what to work for
Yeah,
in the coming
right.
year. Okay. So we're gonna have some money that hopefully we can put towards some needs, okay? Let's see, the other thing is, after our presentation here, I have often brought this up about, the affordable housing. I remember back when they did, what did the apartment center in Southern? When they did Columbiaville, and I remember when they did the senior housing on 12th. And it wasn't a contractor coming in and saying, I'm gonna buy some land, I'm gonna build some houses, and boy, I'll make them as cheap as I can. Those were all federally subsidized housing. I'm wondering if we can't put that as a goal or a priority or something that we can work towards as a community. Getting that, because like I say, the elderly here, the people that are getting older, they're not able to go after they can't afford their house anymore because of taxes. They can't go rent a place here. I'm not sure where they go, but you just can't afford it anymore. And I think between those of us that are getting older and the community we serve, I think it's really important. We really need to put a lot of effort in trying to get this, anything we can to get subsidized housing. We're never going to get affordable for a certain amount of people. We need to get subsidized. Very similar to what we have right over here in these apartments. When those went in, it took care of a lot of problems. I remember specifically, a lot of the single moms with 2-3 kids were finally able to get a decent place to live, and they had good management. And it's just endured for a long time. And also down there on 12, that's a great deal for older folks to be able to move in there and be able to afford a place of their own.
Well, on both of those projects, the city partnered with Captain for the pre-Captain on the one. And we have partnered, with the Land Trust, Community Land Northwest.
Yeah, Susan, I don't need to, so I'm just saying, that we need it as a priority. I think this council would agree that what we need to do is we need to make this a real priority of this group to try to get that sort of housing in Columbia Falls.
Who owned the property when they built the school?
It was privately owned.
It was private.
It
It's
wasn't
like
the
it was
city's.
government money that just
Government money.
built the buildings. Hiring private contractors, obviously.
Seeing a 30-year payback, so the city gets $7,627 for T-Title Vista annually if they met certain income targets, but most years they do. That money, right, we set, not a lot, right, so we set that aside. So, and then ironically, our community, the income level is too high. We don't automatically qualify for community development block grant. We have to qualify projects, like we qualified the Habitat project, qualified all the other housing projects, and we have partnered. So the other thing is with the federal rules, we are too small to be like a certified housing authority ourselves. So we have to partner with everybody else, right? But that's some of those resources. So Councilor Robinson had brought up before, like, do we look at housing, and where, what city land would we possibly have? Because Mayor, you all talk, yes, what can we do? So Paula had asked at a meeting, can we put a multifamily housing unit on the Railroad Street, that park? It was not deeded to the city as parkland. It wasn't a plat requirement. It was actually acquired from Montana Department of Transportation, that parcel, because if it's deeded parkland, and like just read the attorney, then it takes the vote of the people to change it from deeded parkland, right? But that land, and so is there...
But even at that wouldn't satisfy where I'm going with what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's got to be some federal help
Right.
that we can do this and supply this housing. I don't care if it's on the park or if it's
We have to-
wherever.
we have to find
It doesn't
land,
matter at this
right?
point. I think we need to be looking into finding out what we can do to acquire that sort of thing. And I know it's a long road, it's a tough road to hoe, and you probably have plenty of things to do. Matter of fact, I'm sure you do. But I don't know, the council, do you agree with me that I think it needs to be a priority? We put together priorities every
But
year.
that's what I'm saying, like, working with Mr. O'Neill, to be able to say, okay, what are you guys doing? Because, Captain, the housing sparrow's nest, right, everybody's invited us to meetings and said, okay, but we do have to be able to find land, right? And what does that look like? Because when Tea Kettle Vista came to us and said, hey, we need you to support this grant, we need you to help us here, they had the land, or they were acquiring the land. So when we look at it's like the
But Tea Kettle Vista owners have looked into the federal assistance doing this, right?
well, that was
They
what
didn't just
happened.
come up and say, we want to build on some land we have and put
No.
senior housing on.
No, Captain had, like, they all worked together, right? It wasn't a private developer. It wasn't a tax market credit project. It was Community Action Partnership and what was the Northwest Human Resources right. And then they split, because when it was Northwest Human Resources, they did the housing and the economic development, and then they split to Captain and then went. But we just need to be able to partner with somebody, right? And look at it. You're right. We definitely need more of those housing units, and we need more housing, whether it's for seniors. The Timber Creek Assisted Living, right? When they platted that, they planned for another wing, right? So you had more housing. All of our assisted living, they're full. They're always at capacity. And the Vets Home,
The Vets Home is-
you're always, aren't you pretty close to capacity? No?
If that's other extenuating circumstances, no help. No help.
And so much of the people that are in this assisted living are people that are getting state money or getting paid. It's not because they sold their house and have $2 million in the bank so they can pay $5,000 a month. I can tell you that from experience.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is a lot of those folks that don't have much are going in there and the state is subsidizing them so that they can get in these assisted livings.
Mr. Mayor, one of the concepts, since I travel the state and I see lots of people in government and around, there's a new concept going around that, hey, Mr. Developer from Florida, if you want to build your homes, 20% of that will be affordable based on the needs of the community. If you want to build. Either that, take your project, or go somewhere else.
That's what they didn't like.
That's what they didn't like.
Except the legislature took away your ability to say that.
30%. Isn't that interesting?
Right, but the legislature took away your ability.
I know that, but that doesn't mean we can't try to do something just like what they're doing with the student loan programs. The Supreme Court says bless, and they're still gonna try to do it anyway on the debt relief for the kids.
Well, I think we can clearly, I think we go back to our partners, right? And when they have projects and see.
We're never gonna get it otherwise.
I mean, we can, so, matches, so when I look at what, like sponsoring grants, we put that in the budget, right? There's cost to doing that. That's in your budget. So whatever, like now, when we're doing that, whatever we need to do to work with somebody, the community land trust is purchasing this lot over here. We have to do the environmental assessment and council will have to, is that where, because we have to roll, that money that we got, we have to roll that into affordable housing. So,
Let's call it subsidized housing. Because you're not gonna get affordable. It's not. I mean, read the book, remember?
I did read the book.
No, seriously.
No,
That's
it's,
the answer.
That's correct.
So, in any case, that's all I just want to make everybody aware of that, make you aware of it, that we think it's very
Okay.
important.
Well,
To be
that's
able to
it.
work with the organizations that we've been presented tonight is the opportunity for us. That's all I have. City manager report.
I have nothing else this evening.
City attorney.
Just to mention that last Monday, July 10th, we met with Susan was there too, but there was a selection of representatives and officials from Montana cities affected by Senate Bill 382, which is the Montana Land Use Planning Act. And the purpose was headed by Executive Director, lead Executive Director Kelly Lynch, to figure out how to facilitate the brainstorm, the implementation of the legislation, because it leaves a lot of it to the individual communities to custom tailor how they want to do it. And so in that meeting, we tried to figure out who was doing what best practices were, and share some resources. So then the league will then use that information to draft guidance and templates for other cities that might want to opt into that program. So Kelly did a pretty good overview of the bill, and then, there was part of the schedule further meetings, but just to say that city attorneys across the state and planners in these different communities are going to be real involved in drafting those guidance pieces and those templates for other cities besides just the 10 that are directly affected that want to opt into that. So.
I have a question for you.
Oh, good, because I probably can't answer.
The self-governing powers, if we had self-governing powers similar to what Whitefish has, exactly what Whitefish has, a lot of this legislation that comes down the pipe like that, which goes into state law, would we be able to do our own changes to that? If you had self-governing power?
I think they added 4 sections to the statute that if you have self-governing powers, you may not. I think they added 4
The
sections.
reason I say that is we're looking at next year doing this, voting for a government review, whatever. I'm just thinking, when I was on that committee last time, we did that, we could see no reason why we don't self-governing power. You just follow state statute. Well, no, it just seems like when they come down with all these egregious things going on and they're throwing at us, maybe we need to be able to have self-governing power that we can thumb our nose at them and honestly make our own decisions.
Being that I spend a lot of time in the morning sending information to our representative and senator, which doesn't mean I got many responses, but the feeling that is in Helena is that when it comes to this stuff, the cities are the bad guys, and we delay all the development. And as Susan, when we all know on the planning board, my God, it takes 1.5 years, 2 years to go through all the hoops to have a plan to bring to us with a lot of money. That's why I've often wondered when these are turned down, these guys with money, why aren't they suing the people who are blocking it? That's the question that's around the state right now, when people are stopping development when we need houses. Why don't they sue somebody to stop you? Because you know what, there's a lot of money out there, and they're looking at this state for a lot of development in spots, even here. And they're just restricting, they want us to restrict what we can or can't do. Instead of letting the local people take care of it, not Helena.
Chief, you have anything?
No, sir.
Nothing?
No.
Seeing no further business to be brought before the council?
Motion adjourned.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.